Welcome to the Christ in Private Practice podcast, where we empower Christian counselors and share stories of God's work in mental health. I'm your host, Camille McDaniel, licensed professional counselor. Let's dive in. Welcome back. I am happy that you all are joining us again for another episode. Today, we are going to be talking to Dr. Colson. I'm really excited for you all to hear what she has to say today. She has some really great information that she is going to talk to us about as it relates to trauma and abuse recovery, as well as a therapeutic approach that she developed that is evidence-based. I was telling her before we actually went live that I was excited to hear about this, and I'm sure you all will be too, because I have had some trainings in the past as it relates to trauma, but they did not have Christian integration. There was no biblically sound, information that went along with it. So this is right up her alley, and I'm excited for you all to hear what she has to say. We are going to jump right in with it, and I'm going to tell you a bit about Dr. Colson. She's a licensed professional counselor, certified professional counselor supervisor, and certified clinical supervisor with Georgia Addiction Counselors Association. And she's certified as a master addiction counselor by the National Association for Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Counselors. She's a diplomat in the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress, and she is the co-founder and executive director of Eagles Landing Christian Counseling Center. Now, in case anyone is here in Georgia, this is where I'm located. This is where she's also located. Eagles Landing Christian Counseling Center has 3 locations. They're in McDonough, Covington, and Locust Grove. She is also founder of Trauma Education and Consultation Services. I love my guests are so involved. They have extensive histories. Dr. Colson is no exception because she has been in this field since 1982, and her experience in this field has led her to design and publish many resources for trauma survivors that incorporate Christian integration. Excuse me. She has several published books, including Break Every Stinking Chain, Healing for Hidden Wounds, which also has an accompanying workbook. It is available right now. So there's paperback, hard book, Audible. It even is translated into the Spanish language. So that's pretty awesome. Her training manual, The Strategic Trauma and Abuse Recovery System, a Christian integrated comprehensive 3-phase model for individual and group counseling, is also available on Amazon and has paperback and ebook. And then her most recent book, titled Trauma, 10 Reasons Why Christians Need to Talk About It, is also available on ebook and paperback. She loves Jesus and she loves serving in her church, and she currently supervises interns and conducts public speaking events and trains and consults with other mental health professionals. Thank you so much, Dr. Colson, for sitting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Camille.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Colson, tell us, could you just share a bit about your journey? Like, what led you to even create this strategic trauma and abuse recovery system?
Well, my journey started in when I started in the field in the 80s, and we were talking about adult children of alcoholics. I got involved in the adult children of alcoholics movement, and then got training in adult survivors of sexual abuse. And back then, the thought was that they were very different types of experiences for people. And I went about working with clients, and as I began to work with clients, I really found they had more in common than they did differences. But this became my passion in working with people, and I love doing groups. I did a lot of outpatient groups. I moved from Georgia to Texas and worked in an inpatient program where I became the head of the women's treatment program where we focused on, most of these ladies I worked with had, some kind of, we didn't really use the term trauma about psychological trauma then, but they had a lot of childhood pain and issues. And we were using a model that asked them, that was CBT based, that asked them to change the way they thought about this abuse. And I just, I became uncomfortable with that. So that kind of set the stage for me. And then in around 1992, I had a Christian integrated inpatient program that I was running and an outpatient program. I was working with a psychiatrist business partner, and the marketing director asked me to go to this training. And so I attended the training, and they had the concept that trauma was at the root of most adult mental health issues and addiction. And it was, at the time, very revolutionary because we didn't have the ACE study yet. This was 92. The ACE study didn't begin to take cohorts till 95. And so this was an amazing approach. I was immediately converted to it and started using it and saw it as very successful with clients. But then later, the author of that and I, had a major disagreement over spiritual integration and research. And so we parted ways, and I developed my own model that was spiritually integrated. I did a lot of research to find out what else was by then working in the field. That was 2011, 2012 here in Georgia. And that's when I decided, there are models out there that are focused on the first stage of recovery, such as seeking safety. And there are models that are there that are focused on the second stage of recovery, which is the grieving and reprocessing stage, which is more like EMDR. And then there are models that are really just focused on symptoms and the phase 3 of recovery. And I thought, I really want, but I couldn't find a Christian model anywhere, specifically Christian. And I couldn't find anything that was really focused on bringing it all together. Okay. And so that for my dissertation, that's what I did for my dissertation for my PhD, is I thought, I'm going to write this comprehensive model. So I did a lot of research. I used what I knew. I used my own experience, as well as looking at the literature. And eventually it became 12STR. Which is what we know now.
Wonderful. Oh, wow. Okay, so then can you give us a little bit of an overview of how 12STR works?
Sure. Well, it is a 12-stage, and I was inspired by Alcoholics Anonymous 12 steps, but it is not the 12 steps, and it's not the 12 steps modified. There are some programs out there that are using the 12 steps, but this is not the 12 steps. It just happened to be 12 stages. And so the first, it's broken down into 3 phases. Safety and stabilization, which is accompanied by the spiritual virtue of faith. I call it feeding your faith. Phase 2, which is reprocessing and mourning or grieving. And that's there we talk about the spiritual virtue of hope. So we call it snowballing your hope. Okay. And then the final phase is integrating, and it's focused on love, activating your love. So we move through the stages, and my book, Break Every Sneaking Chain, the first book is written about the first 4 stages of recovery, and it's focused on educating people about the impact of trauma. So we work through, this can be used in either individual or group counseling.
Okay.
I love group counseling. I just think, and I've just conducted a training this last week, and we do a lot of role playing. And in the role playing, one of the participants commented, this is really, truly what it's like to bear one another's burdens. Because of the structure that we use, it's a very safe environment for people to grieve and mourn together. And it is truly what it means to bear one another's burdens. So people work through the first 4 stages. And the first 4 stages, are focusing on admitting that you're wounded, accepting that you're powerless, understanding that you have to stop trying to fix yourself. One of the, I think, major differences to me between secular psychology and a Christian approach is that with a Christian approach, we understand that all healing comes from God.
I'm glad
God is the source of
that.
all healing.
I was going to ask about that. You're touching on it though, because I was going to say a lot of the trainings are focused around kind of like client heal thyself.
Exactly. Yes. And every trauma model I'm aware of, besides this one and the one that I was trained in years ago, the secular model, is they are focused on healing the wound of trauma. And while other models say that's what they want to do, what they really are focused on is symptoms. Okay. And so we are source focused as opposed to symptom focused.
Okay.
And we see that it's really important not to focus on symptoms because of the paradox that survivors experience. Survivors view their symptoms as solutions, whereas we as health professionals view the symptoms as a problem. And so it creates this paradox. The more we push on the symptoms, the more the brain pushes back. And either people develop new symptoms, or they're just really not able to let go of the symptoms. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, because ultimately my symptoms are my safety, even if they are causing me great challenges in my life.
That's right.
And so if you force me to give up the safety net, I will create a new safety net.
That's right.
But it doesn't necessarily still get to the root of what's going on. And it doesn't require that I have to be strong enough to do it myself, which goes back to looking at the source.
Exactly.
Through Christ, first of all, we are not strong enough anyway.
That's right. Thank you.
But through Christ, though, he can do all of those things that we cannot in our human nature. Yeah.
That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah. So in stage 2 is I'm accepting that I cannot fix myself, and I'm going to turn to God and ask him to heal me, knowing that I have to participate in my healing.
Okay. Yeah.
And so this concept, I think, is unique in that people are, even Bible studies and church groups are focused on fixing your depression. Fix your own depression, get rid of these symptoms, become a better Christian, pray harder. And this is focused on truly giving up and just saying, okay, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit trying. And I'm going to ask God to heal me. And then I'm going to accept that I have to grieve, because I believe grief is so first of all, when trauma happens, we get stuck in our grief. Grief starts immediately. Even if we're not consciously aware of it, grief starts immediately and we get stuck in our grief.
Yeah.
And so people are cycling this hamster wheel. Shock, denial, anger, shock, denial, anger, shock, denial, anger. But they can't break through to move on to acceptance of the pain and resolution. And so I think our role as counselors is to help them get unstuck.
Right.
And healing looks like grief on the outside.
Okay. Okay.
Much like a physical wound can look really awful. When you get a bruise or something like that, it can look really awful on the outside, a physical wound.
Okay.
It swells, it turns colors,
Mm-hmm.
and you think, oh my gosh, I must be dying.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're
That is
right.
a part of the healing process.
It's a part of the
Absolutely.
healing process. It looks really ugly.
But you're
And
actually
that's
getting
what
better.
emotional psychological healing looks like too. It looks really ugly on the
Okay.
outside.
So
And we need
then,
somebody to partner with us. I think this type of healing, God uses relationship. He uses community. He uses partnership to move through, walk through the healing process with people. So that's what this structure does. This structure provides a pathway, moving through the stages first, establishing enough safety and stabilization that they can move into the reprocessing and grieving stage.
okay. Okay. And so the next step is to move into the reprocessing and grieving stage, but you give them the stability of leaning on their faith as they go through that stage.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So we find I teach in Break Every Stinking Chain small ways to feed your faith. What are some ways you feed your faith? Now, whenever I'm doing a lecture or presentation to a mostly secular audience at a conference, they always ask me, well, can this be used with people who are not Christian? Yes, it can, because you can use the term greater power or higher power instead of God if you want. But you have to have actually, there has to actually be something you're focused on. So that might be science.
Okay.
So it might be science. Science, God designed us to heal. He wired us to heal.
Okay.
It's wired into us, I believe. The problem is we turn to other things so much that it blocks the healing process.
Yes. And what I'm hearing in this model that to me seems a little different, which you kind of already talked about, but instead of having, for those of us who practice counseling from a Christ-centered worldview, even if we do serve all people, we don't have to do so much work to try to take an approach that's been given to us that is not faith aligned and try to then figure out how to align it with our faith instead.
Exactly.
This is already coming aligned with our faith. And for anyone who wants to use it that may not be faith aligned, and they can do some work to make it their own. So that's a different approach.
Because everybody has faith in something.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has faith in something. Now, our clients have put faith in themselves, and it's failed. Our clients have put faith in substances.
Yeah.
Our clients have put faith in us. And so the faith that works is, initially, faith in us works if we have a plan.
Yeah.
A lot of counseling, I know, work out with a lot of students and postmasters towards supervision, and they don't have a plan.
Yeah.
Their plan is just to meet with the client and talk to them.
Right.
And while that can be helpful for a time, if you don't have a plan, if you're not doing practice intentionally, then you are not really doing psychotherapy.
Sure. Because even clients are looking for some direction, even for those clients who really do appreciate more ability to just talk through things. They do still desire some direction as they're going through it. Okay.
Yeah. You as a counselor have to have a plan. So this provides the plan that's already Christian integrated, that already walks you. So you don't have to ask, well, what do I do next?
Yeah.
Each step is laid out for you as a therapist. Each stage is laid out for you. So I've given you tools. I've given you assessment tools. I've given you educational tools. And I've given you the handouts. Now in phase 2 is different, and then we add a lot more structure. That's also very unique with this model.
Okay.
So in phase 2, we have a structure for writing, because we have people write out the experiences. We do one source of trauma at a time,
Okay.
which is also unique. One
Mhm.
source of trauma at the time, because really that's all your brain can handle.
Right.
And what happens is there's this natural brain survival mechanism of, I call it the round robin defense.
Okay.
And people come in one week and they say, oh, this is the real issue. Next week, oh no, this is the real issue.
Yes.
Oh no, wait, this is the real issue. So you just kind of go around in circles and you never really get to resolving anything.
Yes, I've definitely seen that many times. And it's like being on a rabbit chase. And it's like,
Yes.
oh, we got to pin something down here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And that that's normal. That's what people do, because the brain doesn't want to deal with the pain.
Yeah.
Grieving is painful.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to, and we're in American society, modern American society, there's this belief that we shouldn't feel pain.
Yes. Well, because
there's a drug for that.
Right. There's a good portion, of the messaging that we do receive in our society that is like, no, happy all the time is a lot better. Feel better. That's better
right.
for you.
That's right. Let's take a pill for this. Let's take a pill for that. I've got a headache. I can go grab my ibuprofen. And, sometimes, and one of the things I write about in Break Every Sneaking Chain is that pain serves a purpose.
Yes. Yes, it does bring a message. It sure does serve a purpose. Yeah.
And we're supposed to pay attention to it. Yeah. And we can survive because grief feels like pain.
This is good.
We want to allow people to work through their grief, to feel their grief, and to learn that they can survive. So the structure of phase 2, there's structure for the writing of the stories. There's structure for the reading of the stories out loud. There's structure that the facilitator has to follow, and to keep the focus on the reader, and the reader's focus on the perpetrator of the trauma. Okay. And then there's a structure for the group members, if there's a group, a structure for the group members to follow, so there's no distractions. And for just this short time, maybe 15 minutes for each client to read a story and process through it, maybe even 2 stories for this, 15 to 30 minute time period. We're just focused on grieving.
Nice. Okay. Really leaning in. Okay.
Really leaning in.
Okay.
And allowing the client to grieve and grieving with them. And so there's a structure that we follow as a facilitator also. And that's what we teach in the phase 2 process. And so then there's 6 stages, though.
Okay. Wow.
In phase 2.
Yes.
Stage 1 is the story. That's it. Now, most models, that's where they kind of stop.
Okay.
Is telling your story and grieving. Back when I first started, telling your story was taboo. They did not let you tell your story. In fact, we were taught at Georgia Council on Child Abuse, the first training I went to on adult survivors of sexual abuse, we were told, don't let them tell their stories. It's too destabilizing. It re-traumatizes them.
Wow. Okay.
That's what we were taught. Yes, that's what we were taught. And I was a good rule follower. So.
Right.
So that's what I did. So when I went to the secular training about where they wanted you telling your stories, I was like freaking out. I was like, oh, no, that's...
we don't do that.
We don't do that. But I became convinced that people have to tell their story.
Okay.
They need to tell their story. Yeah. We have to get it out of the brain. It's stored in the brain. We have to get it out of the brain. But we need a structured way that provides safety in order to do that.
Yeah, that's so key. Because we definitely don't want our clients to be compensating.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, with this model, this therapeutic way of addressing pain and trauma and abuse, are there any populations that this may be more challenging to work with on? Any populations that may not be a good fit for this model?
Sure. Yeah. If a person is actively psychotic, we can't use this model, or diagnosed as schizophrenic, or if they're in an uncontrolled bipolar state, you would not use this model with them.
Okay.
Rape is a recent rape is difficult sometimes for people, but I have used it with rape. I've used it with child sexual abuse, which tend to be more challenging populations, but I have used it extensively with that. Adult children of alcoholics. The thing about it is this model can be used with any type of trauma. It is not, I developed an assessment tool called the Simple Trauma Source Assessment, which I give out. If people want to get on my email list, I'll be happy to send them a copy of that Simple Trauma Source Assessment, and just put in the message that that's what they want, a copy of it, and I'll be happy to send that out to them. And it lists like 26 things age of 18,
Mm-hmm.
and then 30 things as adults, because adult trauma, onset trauma, and childhood trauma are both treated by this model.
Okay, I was just going to ask, is this just for adults? So there's a version for children, there's instruction
a version for
adults.
Adolescents. Now, we modify for children in that we don't do the writing.
Okay.
We can use drawing, play therapy, that type of thing, to move through those general stages of recovery. But for children, most trauma is near term. So we're going to use the near term form of trauma. I call it the lend a hand model.
Okay.
And,
okay.
Yeah, I'll be doing a short workshop on that soon. But yeah, the lend a hand model is what I call it, which is for near term trauma, which works great with children. Because, for the most part, that's near term trauma for them.
Now, as you talk about workshop, that also kind of just dings something else I wanted to ask you about. So for any mental health professional that's interested in starting this, learning more about it, maybe even implementing it themselves in their own practices, like now, what's the training and certification process involve?
Sure. Yeah, if you are already licensed in the state of Georgia or have your master's degree, you can become a certified facilitator. And you can, it's a little bit of an extensive certification process just in order to protect the model a little more. Mm-hmm. We have 2 published research articles now on the efficacy. And I have a research team, and we continue to work on, we have 2 professors that run our research team, and we continue to do research. So the certification requires that you attend the initial 3-day intensive training, which can be online or in person. Then I have one in the October, I think it is. But I list them on my website, traumaeducation.com. It's just spell out traumaeducation.com. And you'll find under events, you'll find all my training and workshops that are coming up. Awesome. And they can get trained initially. Then I want them to go out and use it. I want them to go out and use it. And then we require a certain amount of consultation group participation or supervision in the model. And then a certain number of additional training hours that we provide. Like I have another 3-hour intensive I do that's on working with substance users who are, and we treat the substance as a source of trauma for the user, which is also very unique.
Okay. Wow.
Not just for the family. That's kind of obvious. The family members of an addict are traumatized by that.
Awesome.
But we also treat the abuser or the user or the addict.
Okay.
And we treat them with the substance as the source of trauma.
Okay. Wow.
As a perpetrator in their lives. which is
Yeah.
a little unique also.
Different
So we
approach.
adjust the
Yes.
model for that.
Okay. So tell us then where we can find, I know you told us where we can get the training and certification. Where can we find you? I know Amazon, you have your books, and
Yep, all my
I think
books
you
are on
have a couple of
Amazon.
copies. So if you
Yep,
can,
Break Every Stinking Chain. This is a book that's written for your clients as well as for you as a counselor,
okay, awesome.
because it helps you. It's written at a 5th grade level, and it has a workbook that goes along with it. And it basically what you do is you read a chapter in the book, do a chapter in the workbook. Read a
Okay.
chapter in the book, do a chapter in the workbook. And it's biblically integrated.
Nice.
It does have scripture in it. It talks about how I use different stories in the Bible to talk about trauma. And that's available. And it's also available on Audible if you don't want to read, if you just want to drive in your car and listen to it as you're driving back and forth to work. It's on Audible. It's in Spanish. I'm so excited about that we just finally got that done. We've had a lot of requests for Spanish version, but we have a Spanish version now too. And then this is the training manual we use, but it's available online. People can just buy it and read it. So if they don't want to invest, $200-$300 in training right yet, they can go read the model, and so they can just help them decide, is this something I really want to invest in?
Okay. And that's the strategic trauma and abuse recovery system. Right. Awesome. Okay.
That's the whole thing with references and everything. And I failed to have a copy of Trauma 10 Reasons. It's a very small book. Trauma 10 Reasons Why Christians Need to Be Talking About It. And I wrote it specifically aimed at ministry leaders.
Okay.
So they can see, we as a church, we need to become the hospital.
Yes. Yeah.
We need to become the hospital. And my vision is for Christian counselors trained in the model to partner with churches who are conducting support groups, trauma support groups, using the Break Every Stinking Chain curriculum. They're doing the phase 1 process in churches. We certify peer coaches to do that.
Okay.
And then we have facilitators and associate facilitators doing the phase 2 work.
Okay. Really?
And then people go back to the support groups in phase 3 to mentor and to lead and to encourage other people as they are moving through the healing process.
The phenomenal part about like it's all sounding so good, right? For lack of a better term. But the other thing that it looks like it just walks the person from pain all the way through to healing, all the way through to, if they desire, give back and help somebody else,
That's right. That's right.
I know oftentimes in those settings, it can be really beneficial for people to actually see that the person facilitating or the person who is helping has been there, and
That's right.
And, to see it's possible because I'm looking at somebody who's been there and come out on the other side. Wonderful.
Yeah. I have a written testimonial I just recently received, but it's being used in treatment facilities. It's being used in substance abuse treatment facilities here in Georgia. It's been used in a facility for a long time up in New Jersey. And so it's being used in other facilities, the whole model, both the workbooks, and then the treatment, the long-term trauma treatment is being done in several facilities around Georgia.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah.
This is great. Well, we will make sure that on Christ in Private Practice website, we have all the links for the books, that we have a link where people can go if they're interested in getting trained and certified, if they want to connect with you. Please tell us again, how can people connect with you directly? And then there was a form you could even send them for them to just have as a resource and basically even keep in touch and know what's going on.
Yes, all they have to do is go to my website, traumaeducation.com, and they can sign up on my email list. There'll be a pop-up that says stay in the know or something like that. They can sign up for my email list. And they can also send me a message through the website if they want to do that and say, I heard you on Christ in Private Practice. Please send me some resources. I'll send them a copy of the Trauma Survivor Blueprint, which explains how we move from an incident to developing a trauma survivor identity.
Wow.
And
Okay.
then I will also send them some assessment tools, the ACE assessment, as well as the simple trauma source assessment.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Thank you so much. This is great. I know you all have got to, everybody listening to this episode has got to take advantage of what Dr. Colson is offering. This is phenomenal. This is great. So much healing, I can tell, is coming out of all the work that you have done over the decades. So thank you again for talking with us today, sharing
Thank you, Camille. Thank you so
program
much.
with us. It's a great benefit. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Camille. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.